The annual Fremont County Fair, held every August in the small town of Colville, Wyoming, was the kind of old-fashioned community event that hadn't changed much since the 1950s. There were hayrides and cotton candy, hand-sewn quilt contests, livestock shows, and a Ferris wheel that creaked slightly when the wind blew across the plains. On Saturday, August 16, 1980, the fair was in full swing by noon. The sun was high, children were running wild with balloons and sticky hands, and bluegrass music poured from the open barn where the main stage had been set up. For the Darnell family, the fair was a yearly tradition. Tom and Leslie Darnell brought their two sons, 8-year-old Jesse and his older brother Travis, 11, every year without fail. That day, Leslie wore a wide straw hat, already flushed from the heat, and Tom carried a fold-out chair in one hand and a thermos of sweet tea in the other. They parked in the long grass outside the fairgrounds and walked through the gates around 1:45 p.m., just in time for the ribbon-cutting ceremony on the new poultry exhibit. At around 2:10 p.m., while standing in line for corn dogs, Jesse asked if he could go look at the piglets again. He had seen them earlier and was obsessed. Leslie told him to wait, but Tom, distracted, waved him off with a smile and said, "Stay close, buddy." Jesse ran off toward the livestock pens behind the main barn. It was the last time anyone saw him. By 2:40 p.m., Leslie was getting nervous. She told Tom she hadn't seen Jesse come back. Travis said he hadn't seen him since lunch. Tom, not too worried at first, walked over to the pens where the piglets had been displayed. No sign of Jesse. He checked the bathrooms, the corn maze, and the vendor stalls. He asked a few strangers if they'd seen a little boy in a red t-shirt and brown shorts. By 3:15, panic set in. The police were called by 3:35. Sheriff Lonnie Hepler and 2 deputies were on the scene within 10 minutes. They quickly cordoned off the fairgrounds and began asking for descriptions. A photo of Jesse from Tom's wallet was pinned up on a makeshift bulletin board by the 4-H booth. Volunteers were organized. Fairgoers were asked not to leave. The Ferris wheel was stopped. A search perimeter was drawn up. By sundown, helicopters were circling overhead, and dogs were brought in from Casper. They found nothing. For days, then weeks, the investigation continued. Every square inch of the fairgrounds and surrounding farmland was searched. Creeks were dredged, abandoned sheds combed, and livestock pens turned over. Flyers went up in Colville, Lander, Riverton, and even as far as Cheyenne. Leslie appeared on local TV news in tears. Tom didn't speak publicly at all. Rumors spread. Some claimed they'd seen a strange man in a brown van outside the fair earlier that morning. Others whispered about a traveling carnival worker who left town the night Jesse disappeared. One boy at the fair told deputies he saw Jesse near the hay bales behind the rodeo ring, talking to someone tall wearing a cowboy hat and sunglasses. But no hard evidence ever surfaced. By October, the search had slowed to a crawl. By December, the investigation was technically still open, but Sheriff Hepler told the Darnells not to expect much more. Part 2, The Barn. 30 years later, in the fall of 2010, real estate agent Amanda Weathers was hired to appraise a decaying farm property in the outskirts of Fremont County. The land had been abandoned for over 2 decades, and the barn, blackened with rot and overgrowth, was set to be demolished to make way for a new development. Amanda brought her flashlight and camera and entered the barn mid-morning on September 12. The place smelled of old hay and mold. Swallows darted in and out through holes in the rafters. As she stepped over rusted tools and collapsed beams, her foot kicked something beneath a pile of hay. She bent down and pulled out what looked like a pair of small, sun-bleached children's sneakers. One of the laces was still tied. The other had a tag, faded almost completely white. Amanda turned the shoe over and read the inside label. Jesse Darnell. Size, 2. Made in USA, May 1980. She stood up slowly. The hair on her arms stood on end. Amanda called the sheriff's department that afternoon. Part 3, the investigation reopened. When Amanda Weathers reported the discovery of the shoes to Sheriff Lonnie Hepler, the news sent a ripple through the small community of Colville. Lonnie, now nearing retirement, had been the deputy in charge of the original investigation back in 1980. Hearing about the shoes in the barn brought back a flood of memories, many of them painful and frustrating. The barn where the shoes were found was located on the old McAllister farm, roughly 5 miles east of the fairgrounds. The McAllister family had moved away in the late 80s after a series of bad harvests and economic downturns. The property had remained vacant since then, slowly succumbing to time and weather. Lonnie and his team moved quickly to secure the site. Forensic experts were called in from the state police department, and a full search of the barn and surrounding area was scheduled. Over the next several days, crime scene technicians combed through the decaying wood beams, piles of rotting hay, and abandoned farm equipment. The shoes were carefully bagged as evidence, and tests were ordered to determine if any biological material remained, hair, skin cells, or even traces of blood. Although 30 years had passed, cold cases sometimes yielded unexpected results thanks to advances in forensic science. Meanwhile, the Darnell family was notified. Tom and Leslie had long ago moved to Wyoming's capital, Cheyenne, but still remembered their son vividly, every feature, every sound, every laugh. The news was both a shock and a source of reluctant hope. Tom sat silently in the small meeting room at the sheriff's office when Lonnie broke the news. "We found something, Tom," Lonnie said carefully. "Your boy's shoes. At an abandoned barn east of town." Leslie, sitting beside Tom, gasped softly, tears welling up. 30 years of uncertainty had finally narrowed to a single object. "We're reopening the case," Lonnie continued. "We're going to look at everything again, starting from scratch." Tom nodded slowly, his hands trembling. "We just want to know what happened." Part 4, Old Wounds and New Leads. The discovery triggered old tensions in the town. Some locals whispered that the McAllister farm had always been cursed or bad luck. Others speculated about the kind of people who might have passed through the barn. Amanda, the real estate agent, found herself drawn deeper into the mystery. She started digging through old town records and newspaper archives to understand the property's history. What she uncovered was a tangled web of faded memories, past tragedies, and secrets the town seemed eager to forget. One article from 1981 mentioned a man named Carl Myers, a drifter and occasional laborer, who was seen near the fairgrounds the day Jesse vanished. According to witnesses, Myers was known for his strange behavior and had been asked to leave the county a few months later for unrelated disturbances. Another thread led Amanda to interviews with elderly residents who remembered hearing about strange noises coming from the barn late at night in the years following the disappearance. Some claimed to see flickering lights or hear muffled cries. The barn had become a place avoided after dark. As for the sheriff's team, they revisited the eyewitness reports from 1980, re-interviewing people who were still alive and reachable. Some accounts were contradictory, others revealed small details overlooked before. Travis Darnell, now in his 40s and working as a mechanic in Cheyenne, was asked to recount his memories of that day. His testimony was crucial. He was the last family member to see Jesse alive, even if only briefly. "I remember Jesse ran off toward the pig pens," Travis said quietly. "I was distracted by the Ferris wheel lights. I didn't see what happened next. I always thought maybe he wandered off, got lost, but after all this time I don't know what to think anymore." Part 5, The Barn Secrets. Forensic teams found traces of soil, hair, and some decayed fabric near where the shoes had been discovered, but no conclusive DNA. However, several items were uncovered in the barn during the detailed search: an old pocket watch, rusted tools, a torn scrap of a red t-shirt, matching the color Jesse wore that day, and, intriguingly, a bundle of handwritten notes hidden inside a loose floorboard. The notes were written in a shaky hand and appeared to be journal entries dating from the early 1980s. The writer described a man named CM, who frequently came to the farm and seemed to be involved in strange activities. The tone grew more anxious with each page, suggesting the author feared for their safety. Sheriff Hepler speculated that these might be the writings of a previous tenant or someone who worked the farm and knew more than they admitted. The initial CM aligned with Karl Myers, the drifter from the newspaper clipping. The local historian, Margaret Reynolds, was brought in to help decipher the notes. She hypothesized that Karl Myers might have used the barn for secretive or illegal purposes, possibly even holding someone against their will. Part 6: Shadows of the Past. The quiet town of Colville stirred once again under the weight of a cold case reawakened. For decades, the name Jesse Darnell had been whispered in somber tones, a boy swallowed by the summer fair, whose disappearance haunted families and neighbors alike. When Sheriff Lonnie Hepler revisited the evidence, he couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something had been missed back in 1980. New forensic methods, the persistence of the family, and Amanda Weathers' discovery had cracked open a door that years of dust had sealed shut. The family reunion. Tom and Leslie Darnell returned to Colville after 30 years, driven by a mixture of hope and dread. The town had changed in small ways. The diner where Leslie used to order cherry pie had a fresh coat of paint, the fairgrounds had been modernized with new rides, and many faces were unfamiliar. But some things remained the same: the wind that swept the plains, the outline of the hills, and the barn, still standing like a dark relic on the old McAllister farm. Their reunion with Travis was quiet but heavy with unspoken words. Travis was a sturdy man now, but his eyes held a shadow of the child who had lost his little brother. Over the years, their family bond had frayed under the pressure of grief and unanswered questions. "It's like the past is breathing down my neck," Travis said one evening over coffee in the town's faded cafe. "Seeing those shoes again, it's a cruel reminder that he was real, that he was here. And then, just gone." Leslie nodded, reaching out to squeeze her son's hand. "We have to find out what happened, for him, for all of us." Tom remained stoic, the years of silence etched deeply in his face. "We owe it to Jesse." Re-examining the evidence. Sheriff Hepler and his deputies pored over the old case files. Witness statements were scanned, photographs reanalyzed. The faded Polaroid of Jesse taken the morning of the fair was scrutinized under new light. Could something in the background offer a clue? The timeline of that afternoon was reconstructed with painstaking detail. Several witnesses recalled seeing a man matching Karl Myers' description: tall, thin, unshaven, wearing a battered cowboy hat, lurking near the livestock pens and the Ferris wheel. However, the original police had failed to interview many potential witnesses, including a few fair vendors and farmhands who had been new to town and left shortly after the disappearance. Amanda's investigation deepens. Determined to uncover the barn's secrets, Amanda interviewed the neighbors of the abandoned McAllister farm. An elderly woman named Ruth Stanton, who lived a mile down the dirt road, remembered the farm's strange history vividly. "I heard noises from that barn late at night, more than once," Ruth recalled, her voice trembling slightly. "Like someone crying, or pleading. We thought it was the wind, but it wasn't." Amanda pressed her gently. "Did you ever see anyone around there?" Ruth shook her head. "No, just lights sometimes, flickering." "And the van?" "Oh, that old brown van. I always felt uneasy when I saw it parked near the barn." She described the van as old and rusty, with no license plate, often parked at odd hours. The description matched some reports from 1980 about a suspicious vehicle seen near the fairgrounds. Unraveling the notes. Margaret Reynolds worked tirelessly to piece together the journal entries found in the barn. The shaky handwriting spoke of a man who grew increasingly fearful. The writer, believed to be an itinerant farmhand named Henry, had documented Karl Myers' odd behaviors, secret meetings, strange visitors, and a hidden compartment in the barn's floorboards. One entry stood out. August 15, 1980, Karl brought the boy today. Said he found him wandering near the fairgrounds. The boy looked scared. Carl said no one would ever find him here. I don't know what to do. This isn't right. The date matched the day before Jesse vanished. A breakthrough. Encouraged by the new evidence, Sheriff Hepler sought warrants to dig deeper into the McAllister property. A ground-penetrating radar scan was conducted beneath the barn floor and adjacent soil. The results revealed an anomaly, a hollow space large enough to be a buried chest or box. Excavation began cautiously. After days of digging through compacted earth and rubble, the team uncovered a rusted metal container sealed shut. Inside were items that sent a chill through everyone present: a tattered red shirt matching Jesse's clothing, several children's toys, and a small collection of personal effects, a wristwatch, a necklace, and a faded photograph of Jesse with an unknown man. Part 7: Secrets Buried Deep. The discovery of the metal container inside the barn sent shockwaves through Colville. The items inside, Jesse's red shirt, the worn wristwatch, a small necklace, and the faded photograph, were tangible echoes of a past the town tried to bury. For the Darnell family, they were fragments of a nightmare half forgotten but never truly healed. The photograph. The photograph was small, its edges curled and stained with age, but the image was clear enough. It showed Jesse standing beside a man in his mid-30s. The man's face was partly obscured by shadow, but something about his posture, a protective arm around Jesse's shoulders, suggested familiarity. Amanda studied the photo closely. Who is this man, she wondered aloud. Is he friend or foe? Sheriff Hepler passed the photo to Margaret Reynolds, who had become the unofficial historian and interpreter of the case. Margaret squinted at the figure and then gasped quietly. That looks like Carl Myers, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I've seen old mugshots from the police archives, and the resemblance is unmistakable. Carl Myers, the man behind the mystery. Carl Myers had been a drifter with a criminal record dating back to the late 1970s. Known for petty theft, disorderly conduct, and disturbing the peace, his reputation was far from honorable. But no charges had ever stuck to him regarding disappearances or violence, until now. Sheriff Hepler decided to dig into Carl's past, reaching out to neighboring counties and state police. What emerged was a troubling pattern. Carl had been moving from town to town, leaving a trail of strange disappearances and rumors of secretive behavior. Yet no one had concrete proof. Meanwhile, Amanda connected with a retired deputy who had once worked in Colville and remembered Carl's sudden, unexplained departure shortly after Jesse vanished. He just disappeared one day, the deputy said. Like he knew someone was after him. A town's buried fears. The town's elders were reluctant to speak openly. Memories were sharp but coated with decades of denial and fear. Some believed the barn was cursed, a place where darkness had settled long ago. Others whispered about secret cults or underground networks, but most dismissed those as folklore. Yet the more Amanda probed, the clearer it became that Colville had been a crossroads for people who didn't want to be found. Carl Myers was only one thread in a tangled web. The family struggles. For the Darnells, the renewed attention was both a balm and a torment. Leslie found herself reliving every moment of the day Jesse disappeared, his laughter, the bright sun, the chaos of the fair. Travis wrestled with guilt, questioning what he could have done differently. Tom, once a stoic pillar, cracked one night. Sitting alone in his old study filled with photos and memorabilia, he whispered to the empty room, "I should have protected you, Jesse. I failed." Leslie joined him quietly, her hand finding his. "We're not giving up," she said. "We owe him that much." New evidence, new questions. Forensic analysis on the shirt and necklace revealed traces of substances consistent with the barn's environment, but also something unexpected, faint residues of an unknown chemical compound. Experts speculated it might be related to pesticides or industrial chemicals common in the region during the 1980s. Moreover, a second search of the barn uncovered faint footprints, too small for any adult, but consistent with a child's shoes. They led to a trapdoor partially hidden beneath loose floorboards. The trapdoor was rusted but could be forced open. Underneath was a cramped crawl space, lined with old newspapers and discarded belongings, including a small wooden toy train missing its engine. The crawl space. Inside the crawl space, dust motes danced in shafts of flashlight beam. The air was thick, heavy with decades of stale earth and secrets. Amanda crouched low, her fingers brushing aside a crumpled paper. It was a torn page from a diary, written by a frightened child. The words were shaky, scrawled hastily. He says I can't tell anyone. He says I have to be quiet. But I want to go home. Please help me. Amanda's heart pounded. This could be Jesse's writing, she whispered. A break in the case. Sheriff Hepler called a press conference to announce the reopening of the investigation. The town listened intently as he promised justice and answers, no matter how long it took. The family felt a renewed sense of purpose but also an ominous shadow looming over them. The past was not done with Colville, and neither was the man who had vanished with a little boy 30 years ago. Part 8, Whispers in the Darkness. The town of Colville was on edge. The sudden reopening of the case, the discovery of Jesse's belongings, and the trapdoor beneath the barn had stirred a storm that no one could ignore. Old wounds reopened, and long-buried fears clawed back to the surface. The diary's echo. Amanda spent sleepless nights poring over the torn diary page found in the crawl space beneath the barn. The scrawled handwriting was unmistakably childlike, shaky, desperate. Every word echoed with the voice of a trapped soul, pleading for freedom. Determined to find more, she returned to the barn, this time with forensic experts and light equipment. The floorboards creaked ominously as they pried open the trapdoor wider, revealing a narrow tunnel carved into the earth beyond. Inside the tunnel, the smell was overpowering, a mix of damp soil, old wood, and something metallic, almost like rusted blood. A crawl through time. Equipped with flashlights and cameras, Amanda led the cautious expedition down the cramped tunnel. The walls were jagged and uneven, carved by hand or tool long ago. The passageway twisted and turned, ending in a small, hidden chamber barely big enough to stand in. In the chamber lay a worn blanket, brittle with age, folded neatly. Beside it, more children's items, a battered toy car, a faded comic book, and a torn photograph of Jesse smiling, this time, alone. Amanda's voice trembled as she lifted the photo. He was here. The man who knew too much. News of the excavation spread quickly. It wasn't long before a shadow from the past reappeared, Henry Collins, the former farmhand who had kept the journal. Now an elderly man living in a nursing home, Henry was reluctant to speak at first. Over the course of several tense interviews, Henry revealed more pieces of the grim puzzle. Carl Myers wasn't just a drifter, Henry confessed quietly. He was part of something darker, a network that operated in the shadows, using places like the barn for their twisted purposes. Henry's eyes clouded with pain and fear as he recalled the events of that summer. Jesse, he got caught in something he shouldn't have. Carl promised to keep him safe. But safety in that world was an illusion. A town divided. Colville's townspeople reacted with mixed emotions. Some demanded the truth at any cost, others urged caution, afraid of exposing skeletons best left undisturbed. At the local diner, whispered conversations filled the air. They say Carl had powerful friends, an old-timer muttered. Men who'd do anything to keep secrets buried. Leslie overheard these words and clenched her fists. I don't care who's involved, she said fiercely to Travis. We'll find out what happened to Jesse. No matter what. Secrets beneath the surface. Forensic analysis of the newly found items revealed traces of a rare chemical used in local industries at the time, suggesting the barn may have been a site not just of captivity but of experiments or worse. Meanwhile, Sheriff Hepler coordinated with state police to trace Carl Myers' associates. A list of names emerged, several long-forgotten criminals, some who had vanished without a trace themselves. The investigation began to look less like a simple disappearance and more like a sprawling conspiracy. The family's fracture. Back at home, the strain was visible. Tom withdrew further into himself, haunted by memories and regrets. Leslie became a fierce advocate, rallying the town and media alike. Travis, torn between anger and sorrow, started to question every moment from that day, replaying it over and over. One evening, Leslie confronted Tom. "You can't shut this out anymore," she said softly. "We need you. Jesse needs us." Tom looked away, voice breaking. "I was supposed to protect him. I failed." The vanished witness. A breakthrough came unexpectedly. A man named Mark Jensen, once a teenager at the fair in 1980, came forward with a story he had never told before. "I saw Carl with Jesse that day," Mark admitted. "They were arguing near the livestock pens. Jesse looked scared, but Carl, he looked angry, desperate." Mark's confession was shaky but sincere. His description added new urgency to the investigation. The hunt tightens. The renewed investigation expanded beyond Colville. Teams searched abandoned properties linked to Carl Myers and his associates. Cryptic symbols found painted in the barn's interior walls hinted at a secret code or message. Amanda's research uncovered old newspaper clippings about missing children in neighboring towns during the late 1970s and early 1980s, a pattern that raised more questions than answers. Part 9: Shadows over Colville. Unearthing the past. The tunnel beneath the barn led investigators to more than just a cramped chamber. Using specialized equipment, the forensic team mapped the underground passageway extending deeper and branching off in several directions. It was clear someone had spent significant effort carving these tunnels decades ago. Amanda, despite exhaustion, insisted on exploring every inch. The air grew cooler and damper as they ventured further, and a faint, metallic scent lingered, like old blood mixed with rust. At one point, the flashlight beams revealed strange markings etched into the walls, a sequence of symbols, half erased by time. Margaret Reynolds identified them as variations of an archaic code used by secret societies, often associated with ritualistic activities in rural America in the late 20th century. The cold case gets hot. Meanwhile, Sheriff Hepler worked the leads on Carl Myers' network. They uncovered connections to an underground trafficking ring that operated in the region during the late 70s and early 80s. Witness testimonies hinted at children being abducted and hidden in isolated locations, barns, abandoned houses, even underground tunnels, until demands were met or the victims were sold elsewhere. One confidential informant, speaking under condition of anonymity, described Carl as a middleman. He wasn't the mastermind but knew where to hide the goods. And he was ruthless. Family secrets and fractures. Back in Colville, the Darnell family faced the strains of renewed media attention and police scrutiny. Leslie found herself torn between hope and despair. One evening, after a particularly intense family meeting, Travis confronted his mother. "Why didn't you tell me about the barn sooner?" he demanded. "We've been searching everywhere but right under our noses." Leslie's eyes welled up with tears. "I was scared," she admitted. "Scared what we might find. Scared it could tear us apart." Tom, usually stoic, nodded slowly. "We kept secrets, thinking it would protect us. But it only buried the truth deeper." An unexpected ally. Amanda's persistence caught the attention of a local journalist, Ethan Graves, who had long been intrigued by cold cases and conspiracies in small towns. He joined the investigation, his contacts and experience bringing fresh perspectives. Ethan discovered a long-lost police report from 1981 that detailed a brief investigation into a suspicious man lurking near the fairgrounds, Carl Myers, who was never formally charged. The report also mentioned a mysterious barn near the edge of town but was marked "No evidence found." The barn's dark legacy. The barn itself became the focal point of speculation and fear. Stories emerged from older townsfolk of strange noises, flickering lights, and disappearances linked to the place. One woman recalled seeing a group of men arriving at the barn one night, carrying heavy crates. Another claimed that children's voices had been heard, muffled and desperate. Amanda and the team set up 24-hour surveillance, hoping to catch any lingering activity or evidence. The mysterious chemical. Laboratory tests on the chemical residue found on Jesse's belongings and in the barn revealed a rare compound used in experimental pesticides banned decades ago. Its presence suggested the barn was more than just a hiding place. It might have been used for clandestine testing or worse. The implication shocked the team. Had the children been used as test subjects, or exposed to dangerous substances? The vanished witness returns. Mark Jensen's testimony proved invaluable, but Amanda sensed he was holding back. After weeks of gentle coaxing, Mark revealed a chilling detail. The night Jesse vanished, he overheard Carl arguing on the phone with someone referred to only as the captain. He said, "If the kid talks, everything's over." Amanda's mind raced. Who was the captain? A local crime boss? A shadowy figure pulling the strings behind the scenes? New leads and dead ends. Investigations into the captain yielded conflicting leads. Some believed it was a nickname for a local businessman with a spotless public image but rumored criminal ties. Others suggested it was a code name used by multiple individuals. Amanda grew frustrated. Every answer seemed to lead to more questions, more shadows. The family's resolve. Despite the turmoil, the Darnells grew stronger in their resolve. Leslie organized community meetings, rallying support for a deeper search and justice. Tom began digging into old family records and town archives, hoping to uncover overlooked clues. Travis, now working with Ethan, used social media to connect with others who might have information, witnesses, relatives of other missing children, even former law enforcement officers. Part 10, the threads begin to unravel. A town on edge. By now, Colville was gripped by unease. The renewed interest in the old disappearance case brought back memories the townsfolk tried to forget. The fairgrounds, once a place of joy, now seemed shadowed by dread. Locals whispered behind closed doors, while news vans parked daily near the barn. The sheriff's department was stretched thin, balancing the demands of the investigation and public pressure. Amanda's breakthrough. One rainy afternoon, Amanda sat in the dim light of the county archives, sifting through decades of records. Hours of digging unearthed a startling connection. Several children had vanished in the region between 1978 and 1983, all linked by one common thread: brief sightings near abandoned farms or rural fairs. More disturbing, many of these disappearances shared the same pattern: an eyewitness account of a man resembling Carl Myers lurking in the background, always just out of reach. Amanda's heart pounded as she pieced together a timeline. The disappearances clustered suspiciously around the dates of county fairs, often on warm summer evenings. The lost testimony. Further exploration into archived police files uncovered a startling omission: a taped interview from 1980, never logged in official records. The witness, a teenage girl named Marlene Whitaker, had seen a strange encounter between Carl and a man known only as Captain. Her voice trembled as she described the man: tall, imposing, with cold eyes and a commanding presence. She never revealed his real name, but she warned that speaking out would endanger her life. Amanda requested to meet Marlene, now in her late 40s, living quietly on the outskirts of town. Meeting Marlene. Marlene was hesitant but agreed to talk. Over cups of strong coffee in her modest kitchen, she recounted that summer evening. "I saw Jesse that night," she said softly. "He wasn't alone. Carl had him with 2 other kids. They were scared, trying to get away." She paused, eyes distant. Captain was there too. He was the one in charge. Carl was just the muscle. Amanda pressed for details. Marlene described the barn, the underground tunnels, and a secret room she never dared enter. The family's haunted past. Meanwhile, Tom Darnell's research uncovered a long-buried family secret. His grandfather, a respected local farmer, had once employed a man who resembled the captain. Rumors hinted at illicit dealings and a dark reputation that the family had quietly buried to protect their name. The revelation shook Tom deeply. Was his own bloodline tangled in the town's darkest mysteries? Uneasy alliances. As the investigation grew, uneasy alliances formed. Ethan Graves arranged a meeting between Amanda, Sheriff Hepler, and a former detective who had worked on the case years ago, a man named Frank Mills. Frank was bitter and worn down but held crucial knowledge about the initial investigation's failures. "We were blocked at every turn," Frank confessed. "Powerful people didn't want the truth out. I lost my badge trying to push deeper." Amanda realized the tangled web of corruption and fear stretched far beyond Colville. The barn's hidden room. Returning to the barn with new resolve, the team found fresh signs, footprints in the dust, faint scratches on the walls. Behind a false panel in the chamber, they uncovered a small room, nearly airtight, with remnants of old furniture and scattered belongings. Among the items was a crudely drawn map, with several places marked, other barns, abandoned buildings, even a stretch of dense forest. The whispered names. The map's marks corresponded to places tied to the mysterious disappearances. Amanda suspected a network, a system of hiding places used to move victims. At night, she pored over the map, trying to connect dots and names. The captain remained elusive but ever present in her mind. Travis's determination. Travis worked tirelessly, gathering stories from those who might have known more, elderly residents, old fair workers, and distant relatives of missing children. His efforts paid off when a man named Roger, a former carnival employee, came forward. He spoke of whispered warnings and a man who ran the show behind the scenes, controlling who came and went. A growing threat. As the truth edged closer, threats surfaced. Amanda's car was vandalized, mysterious calls plagued the Darnell household, and shadowy figures watched from a distance. Leslie, despite fear for her family's safety, stood firm. "We'll bring Jesse home," she vowed. Part 11, Faces Behind the Mask. The Captain's Shadow. Amanda sat late in her office, the dim glow of her desk lamp illuminating the mountain of files scattered around her. Every new lead pointed to a name whispered but never openly spoken, the captain. But who was he really? A man of influence, a ghost in Colville's history. Using a combination of old photographs, town records, and interviews, Amanda compiled a profile, a man in his 40s during the 1980s, tall, with sharp features and a military background. Rumors swirled that he'd been discharged under mysterious circumstances. The family's fractured bonds. Meanwhile, Leslie's health began to deteriorate under the weight of the renewed trauma. Sleepless nights and anxiety attacks plagued her. Tom, usually quiet, found himself clashing with Travis more than once over how to handle the media spotlight. "I'm trying to protect us," Leslie snapped during one heated argument. "This isn't just about finding Jesse. It's about keeping what's left of this family intact." Travis, frustrated but understanding, softened. "I just want answers, Mom. Answers you deserve." Marlene's confession. Back at Marlene's house, Amanda pressed for more about the captain's identity. Marlene hesitated, then whispered, "His name was Robert Kingsley. He was feared, even by the police. No one dared cross him." She revealed that Robert Kingsley had vanished shortly after the fair disappearances stopped, rumored to have fled the state or worse. A hidden photograph. Ethan Graves made a breakthrough. He discovered a faded photograph hidden in a private collection, a grainy shot from the 1980 fair showing a group of men, including Karl Myers and a tall figure matching Marlene's description of Kingsley. The man's face was partially obscured by shadows, but his posture was unmistakable, commanding and cold. The barn's secrets deepen. In the secret room beneath the barn, forensic teams found traces of fabric fibers and old tape residue, suggesting someone had been restrained there. The air still carried a faint scent of mildew and something metallic, blood? Amanda's team uncovered old, brittle notebooks with cryptic notes and sketches of children's faces, some matching missing children from that era. A town's silent fear. At the town hall meeting, residents expressed mixed feelings: grief, anger, and fear. Some spoke of conspiracy, others of neglect. A local elder whispered to Amanda, "Colville hides its sins deep. You dig too hard, you might bring the darkness back to the surface." Travis's discovery. Following a lead from Roger the carnival worker, Travis found an old storage locker rented in the early 80s. Inside were dozens of newspaper clippings, photographs, and personal effects belonging to missing children. Among the items was a small box containing a single shoe, oddly similar to Jessie's, and a folded note with just one word: "Remember." Threats and warnings. Amanda's phone rang late one night. A distorted voice hissed, "Stop digging or you'll disappear like the boy." Undeterred, Amanda tightened security around the team and intensified efforts. The past bleeds into present. Leslie found a faded diary belonging to Jessie, discovered in an old family trunk. The entries revealed a curious, bright boy with fears of a man in a captain's hat who sometimes watched him at the fair. A glimmer of hope. One morning, an anonymous package arrived at the sheriff's office. A rusty key and a photograph of a small cabin deep in the woods, marked with a red X on the back. Amanda knew this was the next step, a new chapter in the search for truth and justice. Part 12, The Final Threads. The cabin in the woods. With the rusty key in hand, Amanda, Travis, and Sheriff Hepler ventured into the dense forest. The cabin was exactly where the photograph had indicated, weathered, overgrown, and abandoned for decades. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight piercing broken windows. The air was stale but unmistakably carried the scent of old wood and secrets long buried. Evidence unearthed. Searching the cabin, Amanda found a hidden trapdoor beneath a loose floorboard. It led to a shallow underground room, lined with faded photographs pinned to the walls, children's faces, some marked with dates and cryptic symbols. On a dusty table lay an old diary, worn with age. Its pages spoke of guilt, fear, and the unraveling of a man named Robert Kingsley, the captain. The diary chronicled his obsession with control and a plan to silence those who threatened his secret. The truth begins to surface. Parallel to Amanda's discovery, Tom Darnell uncovered disturbing family records revealing that his grandfather had, in fact, been coerced by Kingsley decades ago to stay silent about certain activities on his land, including the barn where Jessie's shoes were found. This revelation explained the silence and complicity that had shrouded the case for so long. Leslie's courage. Leslie, though frail, joined the team at the cabin, confronting memories she had tried to bury. She confessed a painful truth: on the night Jessie vanished, she had heard his screams but was too terrified to intervene, fearing the powerful forces behind the captain. Her honesty brought a somber resolve to the investigation. The final confrontation. As night fell, a figure watched the cabin from the tree line, a shadow from the past unwilling to let secrets die. Amanda sensed the danger but stood firm, ready to expose the darkness. With law enforcement closing in, the true scope of the captain's influence in Colville became terrifyingly clear, setting the stage for justice long overdue. A step towards closure. Though many questions remained, finding Jessie's shoes and uncovering the cabin's secrets offered a glimmer of hope for healing. The town, scarred but determined, prepared to face the truths hidden in its past. Amanda looked at Leslie and Travis, feeling the weight of their journey. The past had been unearthed, but the future still held the promise of answers. Part 13, Closure and Shadows. Dawn at the cabin. The first light of dawn crept over the treetops as Amanda, Leslie, Travis, and Sheriff Hepler gathered in the cabin's cold, silent room. The diary lay open between them, its fragile pages whispering decades-old confessions. Amanda read aloud the final entries: Robert Kingsley's descent into madness, his fear of exposure, and his desperate attempts to cover his tracks. The words were a grim testament to the evil that had haunted Colville. Confronting the past. Leslie's voice trembled as she spoke. For years, I blamed myself for not saving Jesse, but now I see how deep the darkness ran. It wasn't just one man, it was a network, a system that crushed hope. Travis reached for his mother's hand, offering silent support. The arrest. Back in town, with new evidence in hand, the sheriff's department moved swiftly. Former accomplices and local officials who had kept silent were summoned and questioned. Though Kingsley himself was long gone, presumed dead or vanished without trace, his shadow lingered in the corridors of power. A community heals. The discovery of Jesse's shoes sparked a movement within Colville. Memorials were erected, support groups formed, and the families of other missing children found renewed strength. Amanda watched as the town began to face its painful history, slowly stepping out of the long shadow of fear. An unfinished mystery. One evening, alone in her office, Amanda found an unmarked envelope on her desk. Inside was a photograph, a blurred image of a man in a captain's hat, standing near the fairgrounds, dated 1981. No signature, no explanation. Amanda stared at the photo, a chill running down her spine. The truth had been partially revealed, but shadows still danced at the edges. Epilogue: The shoes. In a quiet ceremony, Jesse's shoes were placed beneath a small oak tree near the barn. Leslie whispered a prayer, feeling a bittersweet peace. Though the boy who vanished at the fair was never fully found, the town vowed never to forget.